Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our fifth webinar in the series of giving amazing conference speeches. Today, we're going to have a look at transformations before information. And this is a really good one. It helps us overcome one of the big challenges about conference speaking and just business speaking in general is there tends to be, we know too much, so we say too much. We get that data dump. We've all been there. Let's be honest, we want to just cram in all that knowledge and show the audience that we know all these wonderful things about our subject matter. Yes, it's nice to have, but sometimes it's just too much. So, what we're going to have a look at today is what are those deeper human connections that we can strive to connect to, which are particularly important for conference speaking. One idea I'd like to introduce here is, the idea that human connection is much more powerful than information. We are living in an information age. We have information at our fingertips. While you are standing on the stage delivering a conference speech, people can be on their mobile phones with their GBT, searching, cross-checking, sourcing everything that you speak about. So, you put an idea on the screen and people can automatically get up to a certain level of expertise. So while information is good, so those insights and that human connection is really important for you to land your next conference speech. There's a model, as you can see on the right-hand side, the catalyst triangle. It's a framework that I use a lot. And I really think about the way of connecting with people and helping people change in these three areas. Firstly, at the top of the triangle is the story. This is like your influencing skills, your ability to, shape the story, shape the narrative. On the bottom right is psychology. So it's understanding people, understanding that human connection is so important because if you understand people's drivers and motivators, and importantly, if you can align to them and speak to them, then you're going to get people on side. People are going to buy in to what you say. They're going to have that connection. You're going to find that common ground. And that's really important for people to listen to you, just to get people to pay attention. And then on the left-hand side of the triangle is what I call endurance, which is really the psychology of habits, of behavior change, of being really sustainable, be really incremental, having a process that you go through. It's not a linear process. There's cycles in it that really help you make whatever change that you're trying to do. So this idea of human connection is really, that intersection between psychology and story. That's what we're going to be having a look at today. This is super important because ultimately attention is a scarce resource. We've talked about that on previous webinars. Your audience doesn't have limited time, attention, or energy. Even if you have a 20-minute speaking slot, there's many things going on people's minds. Not only, the mobile phone, which is always a distraction, but people around them, the work is on their mind. How do you get their attention? How do you get their attention so that they can listen to you, so that they can even make a decision based on what you've said? So this is super, super challenging, and it's only going to get more difficult with the AI and the technology moving the way it is. So how do we do this? How do we create these transformational moments in our conference speaking? Bottom line, the big picture habit here, again from my book, Influence the Jack Ma Way, is about uplifting. It's about really, painting that more optimistic view of the future. Everybody needs a bit of uplifting. People need optimism in their lives. So what does that look like for you? It's essentially painting the day after tomorrow. And this comes from a Jack Ma quote, whereas today is difficult, tomorrow is much more difficult, but the day after tomorrow is very beautiful. So the idea is like, yeah, we're going to work hard. It's going to get harder, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. If we get through these difficult moments, then we're really going to reap the rewards. So very inspirational. So that's a great idea that you probably want to have in all of your conference speaking. I'm going to run through, just some ideas about how you can actually do this. So what does that look like? So if you're creating a big picture message, we talked about taglines and umbrella messages before, you want to have an idea in your conference speech that I would like you and us together, the audience, we're in this together, to move from this pain here to a better state by first doing this. So we're moving from X to Y. X is not good, Y is much better, and there's a first step. Why do we just have a first move? Again, going back to the catalyst triangle, if you present a really big change and it's overwhelming to people, people are not going to do anything. It's going to seem too difficult. You want to make it sound easy, those tiny habits. Examples from the world of business. So from the SaaS world, we want to move from a volatile, lumpy license revenue driven model, getting our revenue once every 3 years, to predictable revenue subscriptions. That's a change in the business by shifting the next release of our ABC software to the cloud. So at some point, some companies had to make that shift. Microsoft making that shift, Adobe making that shift. So we want to go from X to Y, and here's the first step. Again, that first move might be different depending on who you're speaking to in the audience. From the world of finance, we want to move from traditional banking with legacy IT systems. We want to move into faster growing fintech, technology-led banking. How are we going to do it? First move, re-architecting ways of working, talking about maybe digital journeys, again, different things that you could have as that first move. Retail, going to move from store-centric ops to omni-channel speed and availability. How are we going to do that? Modernizing the supply chain. So again, these are sort of big picture ideas, but they tap into some very important human phenomena. We're going to have a look at those as we go through the next of these habits. So to make a transformation, we have to move people. We have to change their state. You have got to go from A to B, from X to Y. What is that? Well, you've got to start off where we are. What is the current state? The current state is not perfect. You as a speaker have to articulate what's not perfect about it for the audience that you're speaking with. So again, you've got to treasure your audience. You've got to adapt your message and your examples to the specific audience. Sum up the pains, the frustrations of that audience. What's going on in their minds? If you don't know them that well, do interviews before your talk to organizers, get there early, talk to participants, just really get some really granular, real examples. You've got to get inside their worlds. You really got to understand how they're seeing the world. What are they doing day to day? What are they seeing? How are they feeling? What's the current mood right now? What's going on in their world? And ultimately, what we want to convey here is we want to list off those frustrations and pains and difficulties and challenges. But also, as a speaker, we need to, it's not me versus you. It's like, I feel your pain because I've lived it too. So this is your empathy. These are your stories about how you share. Yeah, I've been through something similar as well. So first, very important habit there, share what the current state is. Don't jump straight to blue skies and things are going to be wonderful. Spend a bit of time in the pain. Make them feel the pain. Why? Because when people feel the pain, they get a little bit uncomfortable. They don't feel good. And you want to hold them in that space for a little bit. Why? So they want to feel like they want to change. Because if people feel comfortable, they're not likely to change. That motivation goes away. It's the idea that you might feel like you need a new computer, the keyboard breaks, it runs a bit slow, but you don't buy a new computer until bang, blue screen crashes, and then the next day you're out buying a computer. So that urgency to change is very important. Change to what? Well, this is where you as a speaker take them into the promised lands. You want to paint that picture of blue skies. What would perfect look like? What would wonderful look like? Where does this group of people want to go? Where could they go? Where could their potential lead them? If you were talking to a group of recent graduates, you might talk about, the pathway of their careers. Where could their career take them? If you were talking to, a group of, people in administrative tasks who feel that their careers are being threatened by AI, where might you lead them towards? What changes, if they made them, would help them sustain and develop their careers. So this has got to be upbeat. It's got to be optimistic. This can be partly your inspiration. It can be your views of where you think the industry or this company could go. But it's got to be good. What's great, what's perfect. It's got to be uplifting. It's got to be real. It can't be just sort of making stuff up. I think audiences at the moment are quite cynical and skeptical. So, it's got to be uplifting enough, positive enough, so that people buy into it. And you see this very well with the discussions around AI. We have the doomers, AI is the end of humanity. And then on the other side, you have, AI is wonderful, it's going to change everything, we're going to be so much more productive. Where are you in that particular spectrum? And, and again, whatever you're speaking on, whatever your topic is, there's always going to be a better future state that you can lean into. Examples of this, how you can frame it in business. Amazon, it's always day one. So the future state being we're always entrepreneurial, no matter how large we get, how big we are. We want to keep that risk taking, that entrepreneurial spirit, right? That's the future state of the culture. Netflix, entertain the world. So in the early days, if we want to entertain the world, that means we have to move away from DVDs and posting them back and those sorts of things. Not very scalable on a global side. So just by entertaining the world, you're sort of bringing our perspective onto a higher level. We're going to invest in technology and platforms and content, et cetera, et cetera. So that future state then becomes, part of the strategy, part of the way that we conduct our business. Another example of Salesforce, we touched on the SaaS example earlier, but the end of software. So again, a very dramatic, powerful statement, where companies would launch and every 3 years their upgrades would be a huge thing in the industry. And now we're going to do away with that. It's just going to be like a utility. It's always on whenever you need it. So these are examples of future states that then galvanize people in the culture of the company, in the operations, in the strategy, and in attracting talent. So when you're thinking about putting this together, in your conference speech, could be at the beginning, somewhere in there, you want to have a mini story that encapsulates all these ideas. So number one, current state, what's our pain? Talk about the frustrations, use it as stories, use examples, from customers, from what people said, personalize, humanize the pain. Don't tell people, look, you're very frustrated, or don't tell an audience of customer service people that, the clients are tearing their hair out, they're very frustrated. Put it in an example where people could understand and relate to it, and they start nodding their heads too. So this is where you dial up your storytelling. Future state, where do we want to go? We get uplifted, we get excited, we get optimistic about the world. And then what's stopping us? Those blocks. So think about, of course, you can have a shopping list of blocks, but pick out the major ones for this audience. Each audience is going to be different. You have to tailor your conference speech to the audience. If this is a sort of operational level audience, what are the blocks that they find? It might be about process. It might be about getting sign-offs and authorization versus a senior level audience, where then it might be about resources, might be about decision making, might be about culture, about talent, pipelines. What is the block for these audiences? Again, you've got to do your research. If you know your audience well, then that's going to come naturally to you. If you're a business speaker, you have that advantage in understanding the blocks, but you've got to articulate them away. And when you start to see the nodding going, people agreeing as you tell this short story. 2 minutes, sort of the 1, 2, 3, have this as a pocket speech, a pocket story that you can pull out just to kind of connect to the audience. Finally, though, you want to have some sort of action. Remember at the beginning, we want to go from X to Y by first doing this. That first action is very important. Conference speeches today, people don't only want to be inspired and motivated. They want practicalities, they want specifics, they want like how-tos. Habits is a big thing that we're working on right now. What is that call to action? So 1 year from today, if I was to come back to this conference, what will have changed? What will be different? Are we going to be looking forward and seeing that those wonderful things that we've achieved, or are we still in the rain clouds? Are we still stuck where we are? Are we still frustrated? So what's one small action that can move things forward? If you're doing a conference speech and you have time, this is a great pair and share activity. Have people turn to their partner and sort of like encourage them to come out with one activity. If it's more of a corporate company event, you can do breakouts here, have deep dives into these areas. We do a lot of work in this area because this is where the gold happens, right? This is where you get great ideas, really specific, and they could be then leveraged and amplified across the organization. What are the routines we need to introduce if we're going to be moving forward towards that future state? It's not going to be a one-off. It's not going to be something we do once a year, once a quarter. It's going to be a day-to-day routine. It could be around decision making. It could be around how we talk to each other. It could be about how we run meetings. What are those? How do those routines need to change? Let's make it really specific. What's one thing you can do today? So the idea here in this call to action section, and I believe this should be more of a section than just oh, by the way, do this one thing. Make this at least 5-10% of your, if you're doing a 30 minutes, I think probably should be 5 minutes out of the 30. So maybe 1/6 of your time should be on a call to action, just getting people really thinking about what they're going to do. So today we've talked about how to focus on transformation of the audience rather than just giving them information, because today's audience believe they have access to all the information. They don't need you to tell them things that they can access themselves. So we need to be a transformer, a catalyst of change. How do we do that? We talk about the future states. We uplift people. We're inspirational. We're positive, but we're realistic. It's not about blowing smoke. It's about sort of saying, well, look, yeah, things might be confusing and ambiguous, and the world is in a difficult place. But here's a way that we can move forward. We have to anchor the pain. Some speakers, they don't want to talk about the pains or the frustrations. I'll just skip over that. Sounds a bit negative. Don't want people feeling bad. Well, guess what? If they have the pains, they're feeling bad anyway. The reason for doing that is to show your credibility, connect to the audience on a deeper level. Again, we're going for human connection here. Pains are related to emotions. Emotions are much more memorable. People make decisions on emotions much more than they do on information. So we want to simplify this down. Again, what is the one or two frustrations? Can you boil it down to one idea or one pain point? For example, a global bank that we were working with had a pain point of making decisions. So there was decisions weren't getting decentralized enough. So they came up with a habit of decide or delegate. So every time you decide yourself or you delegate. And we had a little checklist there to really overcome that pain of things getting stuck. Ultimately pain comes down to feeling stuck, not moving, not achieving what you could. And that's why people get frustrated and demotivated. Ultimately, that future state has to connect to something that people want to go to. I remember this famous quotation. I think it was from one of the former leaders of FedEx or UPS, who said, being a leader is finding a marching crowd and running in front of them and waving the flag, and really sort of helping people get to the place that they want to get to. So it's not about you having to impose some strange ideas on them, but it's really just about seeing further down the line and making that simple and digestible for people to understand. And then finally, you got to have action. You'll only have action though if it's simple, if it's an easy ask. The bottom line is, if something is really difficult to do, people are not going to make the change. I know you think if you sort of give everyone all the information they need, they're going to change. Absolutely not. That's not the way people are wired. So you need to make it simple and specific enough for them to change, but it also has to be aligned to what they see in their day to day. Right? If you have the habit is decide or delegate, but then the organization doesn't support that, the habit is going to die. It's going to die on the vine. So it has to be aligned to the reality. This is often where companies struggle, to really get that reality right. You need joined up thinking across all levels, across silos. But ultimately, you need that action point. But the action will only be as good as how well you've anchored the pains, how motivating and positive that future vision is, and how you're going to help people overcome those blocks. So if you are coming into the conference speaking season, you want to amplify your impact, you're ready to make that impact, let's have a chat. I can help you tune up your conference speech. Let's make it more human. Let's make it more transformational. This is much more powerful, because if you can transform an audience, you're going to get invited back. If you can transform an audience, they're going to remember you. If you can transform them, you're going to make meaningful change in that audience. And that's so much more powerful than sharing information. Nothing wrong with information. It's good to have insights. It's good to have data. But where is your edge? Where is your advantage? It's that those stories you tell, the insights you bring, and that human connection that you can bring to your conference speech. So let's have a chat. Look at, really enjoying this series of webinars with you. Conference speaking, it can be so much fun. It can really leverage your career, can really create a personal brand and really elevate your reputation. So I love working with executives on this area. So looking forward to seeing you next week for the sixth and final one in the series. And hope you have a great rest of week. All the best. Thank you. Bye bye.